Hey guys, how are you all doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today, after several days and much internal debate with myself about whether or not I wanted to weigh in on this topic, I have eventually decided to discuss a little bit of this big conversation that's been going around the past couple of days about video games being a potential waste of time, and how this whole conversation really was started by a clip from a recent Joe Rogan podcast where he was discussing the topic, and he mentioned how they can be seen as a waste of time in a lot of situations. And everyone's reactions, including my own initial reaction, and then kind of the bigger picture of the entire topic. It's not so much just about, oh, Joe Rogan, he's a guy, he said this, people are mad, blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit about Joe Rogan and what he said, but it's also about the idea of video games being a waste of time. Now, like I said, I debated even talking about this because so many people were already talking about it. Everyone has already weighed in. There's been plenty of YouTube videos, tons and tons of conversation on Twitter. And like I even already said, I even did make a tweet response to a degree, picking apart one aspect of the argument that he made in that clip. And I was like, do I even really need to weigh in? This isn't normally the kind of topic or controversy, drama that I would really discuss on Rule of Two Review. But after a couple of days, seeing and hearing more discussions and back and forth about it, some people taking his side in defense, some people completely attacking his whole argument, I just realized, I do have some opinions and some thoughts, and it's my YouTube channel to get my own thoughts out about a topic. And so why not just take advantage of the platform I have and kind of share a little bit about what I think is going on in response to what he said. So I'm sure that you guys don't need much of a primer, but basically on a recent podcast, he talked about how video games are so addicting and so fun that they become a waste of time, and that maybe they can be a little bit dangerous. And he didn't actually use the word dangerous, I don't think. I'm kind of paraphrasing and inferring what he was getting at. But essentially that's what he was saying, and we've all probably seen this clip. It's like a minute long, but I'm going to play it again anyway for the context.
Video games are a real problem. They're a real problem. You know why? Because they're f***ing fun.
Addictive.
And you don't, I have a real problem with them. And you do them, and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere.
Right.
It's like you could do, like martial arts, right? You could learn jujitsu. You get obsessed by jujitsu, and then 3 years later, you're like an elite jujitsu athlete. You're entering in competitions. You're a purple belt.
You're moving up.
Yeah, you're doing well. Right. You're thinking I might be able to open my own school one day.
You got confidence.
Yeah, if I have 100 students and those 100 students are paying me X amount of dollars per month, I can make a living. Holy shit, I can have this would be amazing. And then you see your jujitsu school, and your jujitsu instructor has all these students and drives a Mercedes, and he's got a nice family, and that's the future. This way you're doing something exciting and fun, and you don't. Or you could just be playing fucking video games. 3 years later, you could be that same kid just playing video games, waiting for the next whatever the game is, next Xbox game to come out, and you're gonna waste your time.
So that's the clip that initially did the rounds. There was really no before and after context. It's just this one little minute or so clip, like I said, that really started this whole thing and everyone's reaction to what Joe Rogan is saying. And it's interesting because in a lot of ways, he's not slamming video games. He's not saying video games are bad or not good per se. He's more talking about people's reaction to video games and how some people are incorporating video games into their life, and if maybe they're doing it too much. And a lot of people saw it as a straight up attack on video games. How dare you say this about this hobby? This is the greatest thing ever, and oh my God. Yada, yada, yada. Just so many other things. And I get the initial intent to want to defend the hobby because obviously I'm a fan. I'm a gamer. I'm passionate about it. I have this YouTube channel. I wear my video game t-shirts, and I spend a lot of my time playing and talking about video games on my free time away from the many other obligations that I already have. Now, like I already alluded to, a big part of my conversation here is both really kind of defending what Joe is saying and saying that there is some merit to it, but then also picking apart parts of the argument as well, because I don't think that his entire argument really holds up or holds water, but I also don't think it's the most heinous and offensive and egregious thing somebody who's not a gaming personality or true gamer could actually say about video games. In the video game space over the past several decades, and I'm old enough to have lived through these decades as a reminder, we've seen way, way worse things hurled towards the gaming industry and gaming as a hobby between the whole violence in video games thing and the whole congressional hearing about Mortal Kombat and Night Trap in the 90s, to Grand Theft Auto being this bastion for murder, to people blaming crime and teen death and suicide and drug use on video games. Like, there's been way more serious things that have been attacking this hobby than Joe Rogan's fairly harmless, if not also flawed, argument against them. Interestingly enough, too, for the people who are just outraged and so furious at Joe that they can't see straight, they hate the fact that he said this about video games, I find it interesting that, and I actually found this through Philip DeFranco's video and his coverage on this yesterday. So, credit to him for even showing this to me. I never would have known that this existed. And he showcased on his show about this other clip where Joe talks about being a fan of video games.
I have a real problem with video games. We have a whole video game room back there, like a LAN room. I don't even go in there anymore. I just stay away from it like I'm an alcoholic and it's a bar. I can't go in there. Tell him, Jamie. We were playing hours every day, to the point Jamie was telling me I had a problem. He would leave. He'd be like, I'm not playing anymore. I'm like, where are you going?
I mean, to me, that clip is a great example of how he really isn't trying to go after necessarily video games themselves as a hobby. It's not an affront to you or to me or even to people who make games or anyone else who likes video games to say what he said. He clearly enjoys them. He spends his time playing them. He talks about how addicted he is to them. So he understands like the fun and the joy that they can bring. But he does clearly have a different angle. He also feels that they're not necessarily good for people, and that's where the whole issue comes in. And in that first clip where he actually, the one that started this whole conversation, he talked about like, oh, if you're somebody who's into jiu-jitsu and you focus on it and you dedicate and you're passionate about it, and eventually you can grow up and you can start your own jiu-jitsu studio and you're making a living off of it. And in that one clip, that was one of the kind of arguments he used against video games. And he talked about how they're too addicting, they're too fun, they're this instant gratification thing, and so you end up wasting your time and wasting your life playing them. Why not do something else that you could make a living off of? Those were his big arguments against them. You're wasting your life, it's a waste of your time, you could make a living off of other things, okay? And so if we now explore this whole argument, regardless of Joe Rogan, whatever, if we explore this argument, are they a waste of time? Are they not a waste of time? I'll talk about the idea of them being a waste of time and what I think he was getting at and how I don't think it's a completely crazy statement. And some people have gone a little kooky trying to just defend video games and get mad at Joe Rogan initially over this. And what he's really talking about, to me, the way I interpreted it, after thinking about it for a day or so, is I don't really think he's talking about the people who might be like you or myself, who are otherwise successful and active in life and maybe are holding down a job, maybe supporting a family. In the case of myself, I have a career, I have a fiance, we just bought a house, how do I say this without humble bragging? I mean, like, my income bought us the house that we just bought, okay? So what that shows is a level of success that I'm able to maintain as an adult, but also I spend a lot of time playing video games on my free time, and I have a YouTube channel where I discuss it. I am that passionate about video games. And so it's possible to be like myself, or maybe a lot of you guys out there who are doing all these things. Maybe you're going to school full time. Maybe you're doing school and work full time. Maybe you have a family. You have several kids that you're taking care of and you're working. Maybe you're a single mom or a single dad, but you also still like to play video games. You're getting it done. You're raising a family. You're getting good grades. You're making money. You're paying for your lifestyle, but also you play video games on your free time. That kind of lifestyle that I and a lot of you guys live, that's fine. That makes video games just a harmless, escapist time killer, just like Joe said, a waste of time. It makes it that, but it makes it harmless, right? And I really want to believe that he wasn't necessarily talking about people like us who play video games in that context. I think he was really trying to get at the idea of people, and we all know that these people exist, okay? So this is a real thing. People who are so caught up in video games or so caught up in not doing anything with their life that is all they do. And these could be the adults that really haven't made anything from themselves, and they either have no job or a crappy part-time fast food job or something, with no aspirations to go to school or make better money or move out of their parents' house, even if they're in their late 20s or 30s. But they sure spend a lot of time hanging out at their parents' house just playing video games, okay? And that's where the idea of what he was saying makes sense. And it's like, yes, if you let yourself get too addicted to the fun hobby that is video games, then yeah, maybe you're doing damage to yourself. Maybe you're not making something of yourself. You're not contributing to society. You're not making money or making a name for yourself. Or you don't have your own place to live. You're not doing all these other things I listed off, because really you just hang out and you just play video games and you're content just living at home no matter how old you get. Yes, that's where people with a certain kind of personality and certain kind of tendencies towards addictive things might be not best suited to enjoy video games. And so at the end of the day, I really feel like that part of this argument and this discussion does hold up, okay? I think most people that actively play video games and enjoy the hobby are not these people, okay? They're not the people that have nothing going on in life and that are living at home as an adult playing video games in their mom's basement. I think that's not most people. But we do know that those people are out there, so bringing it up to me does make sense. People with certain tendencies really get themselves in trouble when it comes to a variety of things, and video games can be one of them. Now, obviously, there really is still the discussion of how a lot of this argument is wrong and how we need to be aware of what video games can do that isn't damaging and that isn't bad for people, okay? And that's where if we continue the conversation about the whole, they're addictive and people, just sit around doing nothing and they're wasting their life, here's the thing. That to me is a certain kind of person that could have that problem with anything. At this point, when we really boil down and we distill this part of the argument, the reason it doesn't truly hold water is because at this point, we're just lumping the hobby of video games in with 1,000 other things that are time killers, that are time wasters, that are temporary enjoyment, that could potentially be addictive, that could also be harmful if used inappropriately, And so I don't care if you're too addicted to sports, if you're too addicted to running, if you're too addicted to knitting, if you're too addicted to playing video games, if you're too addicted to drugs or alcohol or cigarettes, the kinds of things that actually have physically addictive properties. Yes, you can abuse anything in this life and it can ruin your life. You could be so addicted to collecting socks. I mean, you could just name anything. It's somebody's brain is wired to be addicted to something benign, and maybe it's collecting socks. And this person is working a crappy job to spend every dollar they have going to stupid thrift stores, buying stupid socks they don't need, and shirking their responsibilities to pay their bills and take care of their family. That's what a TV show like Hoarders is about, okay? People who are so addicted to buying things that they don't need that it's harming their life otherwise, right? And I know it might sound like a big jump to go from playing video games to like a Hoarders, but what I'm trying to get at is not the activities, but more the mindset behind them. And so somebody being addicted to video games is just the same as someone being addicted to collecting something or exercising too much or just not paying their bills and therefore harming their life. And so singling out video games in that situation does become a little bit silly. Granted, this is just, an organic free flow podcast where one person on the podcast randomly just brought this up as an idea and as an example, really. He was listing it amongst other examples. So that's where I think people maybe got lost. And like I said in the beginning, it truly wasn't this, outright attack specifically on video games. But it does warrant a larger conversation, which is why I'm having fun talking to you guys about this. The other part of the argument that doesn't hold water is the idea of, you can make a living off of jiu-jitsu, but instead you just waste your life playing video games. And this is what my tweet was about. And this was the part of the argument that did kind of bother me. And I didn't like this argument because I thought it was just completely asinine and weirdly uneducated. Because you can absolutely make a living on video games. There's several different arenas where you can make a living off of your passion about video games. And that is, first and foremost, making video games, which is, again, what my tweet was about. Really interesting that he didn't even consider that aspect. Like, if you're so passionate about jiu-jitsu, you open a business teaching people jiu-jitsu. If you're so passionate about playing time-wasting video games, you learn how to code and to program, and then you make a living making those video games. Just like making people know how to do jujitsu is the same thing as making the video games you enjoy doing. It's clear-cut and obvious. The video game industry is a billion-dollar industry. There's hundreds of companies, big and small, indie and corporate, and there's thousands upon thousands of people who are making livings, paying for their living, paying to keep their family protected, who are making video games. Like, it's just, I don't even have to say it any more than this, right? Like, there's clearly an industry that is supporting the jobs of thousands of people, and there's millions and billions of dollars flowing through it. So your passion for playing video games can become a career in that sense. Obviously, and he did touch on this in one of these clips, being an esports person, being somebody who's making, thousands and millions of dollars as a streamer, playing Fortnite or playing Call of Duty or just streaming anything, right? We know the big streamers like the Ninjas and the Dr. Disrespects and people like that in the world. People who I don't follow. I'm not into the streaming esports thing. But they're out there, man. And esports conventions and stuff that are shown on ESPN, these people are winning thousands and millions of dollars for their prizes. So people are making a living off of playing video games. And then outside of that, you then have somebody who's a YouTuber. And granted, I'm not a full-time YouTuber, but this space is also supporting people's livings. There's so many people who are full-time on YouTube just talking about video games and talking about video game news. That's another way the passion of video games drives people to find a way to make a living. Lest I use the biggest example in all of this, which is PewDiePie. A small little guy you might have heard of who happens to have the most subscribers of any one person on YouTube, who literally made his career. Whatever you think about the guy, I know he's been controversial in the past. I don't care about that stuff right now. I'm talking about who he is. He made his living and his career from just being somebody who plays video games, and then somebody who talks about video games, and now he does video game live streaming and then just other weird, goofy comedy skit videos or whatever he does now. And that's what he does, but video games made him a millionaire and made him a celebrity, okay? And then there's plenty of other people, your Markipliers, your Jacksepticeye's, your angry video game nerds. I mean, the list goes on, and you know these people, and you know the argument that I'm making at this point, right? So I really didn't like that part of the argument, that, oh, you're just wasting time. Why not do something else that could make you a living? And it's like, bro, the video game industry, like I said in my tweet, is an industry like any other industry. If you're passionate about playing football, you can grow up to make a living playing football or hockey or basketball, whatever your sport of choice is. If you're passionate about wrestling, you can grow up and become a wrestler. If you're passionate about being a doctor, you grow up and become a doctor. You teach jujitsu, you make video games. You play video games, you talk about video games. You're making money, it's your career, your passion becomes your income. And so, while I was fairly passionate about talking about this, make no mistake, I'm not super mad about this. I said it on Twitter, I said it in this video, and I'll reiterate it again at the end of the video here. I don't think at the end of the day this was the most heinous, egregious attack on video games we've seen. This was harmless. This was, I want to call it a nothing burger, but it became a big burger, hence why I made a video about it. Obviously, people's reactions and conversations got big enough that it was not a nothing burger because people had to say something about it. But I think it's important to note that clip where Joe also said, he likes video games and he plays them, and so he's learned that they can be, dangerous for people who can't maintain a good balance between their regular life and the hobby of video games. But again, those people are out there, but they're few and far between. Nowadays, most of us, we're competent adults, we're taking care of our business, we're getting stuff done. Oh, and we also love to unwind with video games sometimes. Maybe even often. Maybe even we play video games a lot. I'm playing a lot nowadays because I'm stuck at home, and it's hard to have band practice, that's the thing, is I'm somebody with a career and 2 full-time bands, and I still manage to play video games, and it's obviously not hurting my lifestyle. So anyway, I don't want to beat the dead horse anymore. This is the conversation. This is what happened. These are my thoughts. This is my personal breakdown and my 2 cents if you cared to listen to it. What do you think about my approach and perspective here? And of course, what do you think about what Joe said and people's reactions? I want to hear about it. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Live to Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.